And now, Peter Bates.
Does everybody remember the bumper sticker that said perform random acts of kindness and senseless acts of duty? Okay, before it was a bumper sticker, it was a button, which I read in the early 70s and decided, that sounds like a good idea. Try out, see if it works. So I decided one day, driving over the Mystic River Bridge, it at the time was 35 cents. I had 70 cents with me, and I said, my friend in back of me doesn't have enough money. This is enough to get him through, or them through. I didn't even know who it was. And so I stopped slightly ahead, and I watched the woman, arguing with the toll person who kept telling her to go through. And then I said, okay, I've accomplished my deed, and I started driving off, and all of a sudden, the person starts following me and honking the horn. And I had no idea what that horn was about. I thought could it be, thanks, hey, that was great, or what do you want from me? I didn't know which it was, so I just went on, and I said, I'm not sure that would work that well, but maybe I should try again. My opportunity came about 8 years later, around 81, and I was on the D line, and I got on at about Park Street, and probably about Auditorium or Kenmore. This woman came next and sat next to this young woman, and saw that he was reading a book that she had read, and they started talking about the book. And the conversation got even more and more animated, and by the time we were at Reservoir, they were kind of looking at each other, and then finally they got to Newton Center, and the woman says, it's my stop, I've got to go, and starts leaving and walking off the train with a man looking after her mournfully, and I screamed out, aren't you gonna get her phone number? And he looked at me, got up, and he walked off the train and started to go after it. And then I looked behind as we were pulling out, and she gave me one of these. And I said, uh-oh. That was an eye roll. So, maybe I didn't do the right thing. So I said, there'll be another time. I'm going to keep at this. And sure enough, there was. You know those cars, trucks, you're always in back of this truck that says, how's my driving? Call 1-800-700. So I called. I wrote down the number. It was one of these wedge-shaped trucks driving huge amounts of plate glass. And I called, and this very, very tired woman answered the phone and said, yes, we're going to do fine. And I said, I'm calling. I noticed the number on the truck of your company, and it said, how's my driving? And she said, yes. And I said, he's an excellent driver. Absolutely excellent. He uses his turn signals. He doesn't drive through stoplights. He is very courteous. And there was a silence on the line, and then she said, who is this? And I said, no, it's true. The driver, he was an excellent driver. It didn't say, criticize my driving. It said, how's my driving? I'm just telling you the driving was great. And she said, did he put you up to this? That's how I said, I give up. But actually, I really didn't, because a few years later, I had another opportunity. I was standing in line at Star Market in front of this woman that had a lot of stuff, and she kept turning around and looking at me, and I couldn't figure out why she kept looking at me. I was feeling a little uncomfortable. She was an older woman, and finally she noticed my discomfort. I only had a few items, by the way, and I mistakenly got into the long line rather than the check-through, the express check-through, but that's a side point. So she said, I'm sorry to make you uncomfortable, but you remind me an awful lot of my son who died a while back. And I said, oh. And she started talking to me, and she pulled out her wallet, and she showed me a picture of her son who didn't look at all like me. In fact, he was... But she said, could you do me an awful big favor? My son and I always used to go shopping together, and we would have this little game where I would leave the building, and I would turn around and say, goodbye, son. And he would say, goodbye, Mom. Could you possibly do that for me? And I said, oh, well, I don't know. Please, it would mean an awful lot. Please. And I said, oh, all right. So she, went through the teller, and the clerk, and she turned around and said, goodbye, son. And I said, goodbye, Mom. And then she went out the door, and I came up to the clerk, and he said, I ran my 4 items through, and he said, that'll be $479. And I said, what? And he said, well, your mother said you'd take care of her bill for her. And I said, she wasn't my mother. And he said, well, I distinctly heard her say, goodbye, son. And you said, goodbye, Mom. What's going on here? And so I said, oh. And I ran out the door, and I ran down, and I saw her. She was getting into her car, and I ran up to the car, and just as she was about to close the door, I grabbed her leg, and I grabbed her foot, and I kept pulling and pulling on her leg, just like I'm doing to yours right now.
Thank you very much, Peter. The guy just never runs out of material. It's amazing. Thank you all very, very much, and we hope to see you next month. And just remember, we have the best sound effects in Boston.